Okay, I'm going to be talking about conspiracy law and how I'm going to use it to fix the mess that the whole world is in right now. Lori McBride, thanks to her germ bombs and her corruption and her infiltration into government all over the world and the Jesuit infrastructure, which the Jesuits have worldwide, has just about destroyed the universe. And things have gotten so bad in the United States and all over the world, with the world about to go into a major depression because of Lori McBride's germ bombs and her coronavirus and her candida auris and killing people and making everybody go insane about how to deal with this virus and how to deal with all the germs she's causing, that everybody's desperate. They're saying, we need somebody to save us. Well, I believe the Lord Jesus has raised me for that occasion. And the world is so desperate right now. They know they can't depend on any current politician to save them. They need somebody who's totally from the outside, who is not a part of the corrupt system which is in place. And that person is me. The problem with Trump is he inherited the Jesuit infrastructure when he took his presidency, and he just couldn't overcome it. And it didn't help that his wife decided to take advantage of her position as president's wife to basically, I believe 80% of Trump's cabinet positions that he did from 2016 to about early 2020 were basically Melania Trump's cabinet positions. She basically told him, you better put this person in the cabinet or else I'm going to kill Gail. And she said she was so jealous of me. So that's why his cabinet has been such a disaster. Didn't you wonder why his cabinet didn't seem to... I mean, he campaigned on one thing, and then when he got into office, he hired a cabinet that was like the total opposite of what he campaigned on. You know, don't you wonder about that? That was his wife, Melania. She basically ordered him to choose the cabinet members that she liked. She's the reason that you've got these war hawks in there, like that you had Bolton, Mueller, and all them. Anyways, the main thing is, I'm the only one who can fix the mess because I am not part of the system. I'm totally from the outside. You might say, well, how in the world are you going to overcome the system so that you can enforce your conspiracy law? And that's what I've been working on. I've been trying to be clever. Vladimir Putin and I have been working on this since 2004. Now, Vladimir, because he's the Russian president, and because Russia is experimenting with their government because they just came out of communism and they're trying to come up with an effective style of government, Russia has decided to adopt my conspiracy law 100%. I would say in the past 5 or 6 years, well, Vladimir Putin encouraged me to write conspiracy law, and I'm actually publishing the letters that I wrote to Vladimir Putin in 2003 and 2004 when I first started writing conspiracy law. And you can read that to know what it started off that I wrote it because the Jesuits stole Vladimir's sperm and used it to impregnate a woman, and they were trying to say he was the father because he had sex with this woman. So my reproductive laws were my first laws. I made it death penalty to steal a man's sperm and impregnate a woman and use that as a weapon against him. And then Vladimir was telling me brain to brain other things that were happening. And before I knew it, within 2 years, I had written a body of law to deal with Jesuit corruption everywhere in outer space, using satellite, in the government, in healthcare, in every part of society, and everything so basically I dealt law to rip up that Jesuit infrastructure and make it so that they couldn't operate it. The biggest problem that I had, and so, I wrote reproductive laws to deal with their cloning technology, to deal with their mind reading technology, their to deal with their impersonation. Then I wrote the terrorist money laws to deal with the way they take over the big corporations and their crony capitalism and all the, all the money, dirty money dealings, kind of like Epstein on steroids and all of government, like Jeffrey Epstein. That's your Jesuit style of government. So I wrote laws there. And I mean, you might say, you've never been trained in law? Well, I would have brain-to-brain communication with Vladimir, and then we would work together and come talking to each other. He would tell me what the Jesuits were doing, and then I would write law to counter it. And then I decided we need to set up a network of physicians and scientists and then I wrote my PLP law, privileged licensed practitioners, registered satellite practitioners, where I decided we needed to get a band of scientists and physicians together to have like take care of the people in the population, put shields around them and protect them from Jesuit brain control and everything. And that was different law. So we had to write law on how to do this so that we wouldn't get blamed for what the Jesuits did. Like the Jesuits have methods where they can induce long distance heart attacks. So I wrote law for that. And I wrote law to put shields around people. And I wrote law where we would use satellite technology where we could actually go in and do surgery on people and maybe take out cancers using satellite technology, and laws to make sure that we were able to do it without Jesuits sabotaging us and making us look like criminals while we were trying to fix what they did, their criminal work. And so that's basically my conspiracy law. And then I wrote laws. So you had the terrorist money laws. I wrote conspiracy laws and government, which ended up becoming huge, where I set up government agencies that would deal with different aspects of society that Jesuits were controlling and how we were going to weed them out. And I ended up writing a national health care plan, which is part of conspiracy laws and government, which my men have implemented, which is very, very good. Very good. We have already implemented it, and every place that we've used it, we've ended up actually making a profit because we save so much money. It really works. And then I wrote military law, revamping the military system to weed out Jesuit influence out of military because they're very interested in military. And then I wrote satellite law. Law regarding the use of satellite technology and how to keep the Jesuits out of satellite. And I'll have a link underneath this video to my presidential platform, which basically has a link to every part of how I govern, the laws I've written, and you can read them all. The latest updates to my laws are there too. So I believe that's also in the presidential platform. But if you go to my website is the go-to place to learn everything about me. It's very comprehensive. But let me talk to you about, it's taken me about 2 to 3 months to set up my cabinet, actually almost 6 months. But I've filled a lot of positions. I'm very focused on getting the job done. My men have told me that I have won the U.S. presidency. Apparently there's going to be another election in November, but it's kind of like a joke. Regardless of who wins, I'm going to override them because I'm already the president. So what I've been focused on is not politics, but on government, on enforcing my conspiracy law so we can fix this mess, fix the economic problems we're having, the homelessness, the people getting sick. I've made lots of videos about Lori's germ bombs. So let me explain to you who I've chosen for my cabinet, why I've chosen them, and what I would like to see them do. Okay. My vice president is Tulsi Gabbard. And those of you who've been following me know that I supported her when she first started running. I've chosen her because she is closest to me in viewpoint on how to govern. I actually took a very comprehensive test that determined my views, and my political positions are 77% Constitution, 71% Libertarian, 65% Green, 57% socialist, 57% transhumanist, 49% peace and freedom, 48% Republican, and 39% Democratic. And Tulsi Gabbard lines up very close to me in all of those areas. So because she is more politically aligned to me than anyone else, she's my vice president. I also admire her courage and her integrity. And what's really interesting is she's apparently doing a really good job as my vice president. Basically, I delegate a lot to her because I cannot actually be in the White House, because of Jesuit complications. But it doesn't matter because I've set up a cabinet right now that can act in my place. However, people aren't doing things person to person right now anyways. Everything's online. So it's like, it doesn't make any difference anyway. So basically, I have a very diverse cabinet. Let me just go through them real quick and then I'll go through each one by one. My vice president is Tulsi Gabbard. My secretary of state is Rand Paul. My secretary of health and human services is Bernie Sanders. My secretary of the Treasury is Ron Paul. Secretary of Education, Ben Carson. Secretary of Labor, Stephanie Kelton. Secretary of Commerce, Joe Jorgensen. Housing and Urban Development, Ben Carson. I decided to keep him there, like Trump's got him there. My press secretaries are Donald Trump and Kanye West. They can alternate. I hear that Donald's doing it mostly on mainstream news, and Kanye, I hear, is doing it on Gabriel Chana Fox News. Office of Management and Budget, Jesse Ventura. My trade representative, Vladimir Putin. Best person for that job. My Environmental Protection Agency person is Bill Nye. White House Chief of Staff, Tucker Carlson. Attorney General, Bob Barr. Not Bill Barr, Bob Barr. They're not the same. Secretary of Defense, Sergei Shoigu. He also holds this position in the Russian government. Secretary of Energy, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Administrator of the Small Business Administration. This is an unknown, somebody I discovered, a treasure. Rostislav Sibolka. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right. He's not a very famous person, but I've been listening to his videos and I'm really impressed with him. Secretary of the Interior, John Echo Hawk. Director of the CIA, Brian Dean Wright. Director of National Intelligence, Alexander Bortnikov. He is a Russian. He's also one of Vladimir Putin's closest allies in the Russian government. And he's got a lot of experience. He used to be KGB and all that stuff. So he's really good. Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Dan Bongino. Secretary of Transportation, I'm going to keep Elaine Chao. I decided I like her. Secretary of Agriculture, I'm going to keep Sonny Perdue. That's Trump's choice. I like him. Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, she's in the military. Chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Stephanie Kelton. As you can see, Stephanie, Ben Carlson, and Tulsi have 2 positions each. Okay, now let's go through why I've chosen. I've already just went through Tulsi. Rand Paul. I've been following Rand Paul for years, and his views on foreign policy are almost always aligned with my views. And he does not approve of Trump's war hawk cabinet. He thinks he doesn't like Pompeo or Nikki Haley or any of those people. So he and I are pretty much aligned. So I decided to choose him for Secretary of State. Bernie Sanders, Health and Human Services. There's a lot I disagree with Bernie on. There's a lot I like about him. So what I did is, but when it comes to healthcare, he and I are very passionate about wanting everyone to have access to healthcare. The reason I put him in this position is, even though I don't totally agree with Medicare for all, is basically my national healthcare plan is like Medicare for all, but better. And from what I'm hearing brain to brain, that Bernie likes my national healthcare plan. My national health care plan is set up so that it works with private insurance. I don't get rid of private insurance. It competes with private insurance, but it's all government funded. And so what we do with my national health care plan is we take like Medicare and we blend it with employer funded health plans. We put them together and we offer an option to the public. They can choose one. We offer a Medicare, I would call it a government funded national health care plan with Medicare as part of it. And we control the prices of all the prescription drugs. And no doctor or lawyer can be a part of our network unless they pass lie detection and emotion reads that they honor a conspiracy law. And before any doctor carries out any care in my plan, he has to get before like a computer screen and have his mind and emotions scanned, where he swears that to the best of his knowledge and ability, he's giving care to this patient that is best for this patient. If he fails that scan, he cannot carry out care. He's got to do that before every patient that he sees. We make like allowances for emergencies and stuff, but it doesn't take that long to say, oh, I do this to, you can say it really quick. And the way we save money in the plan is that everyone who uses our health plan agrees that they will only use our lawyers for malpractice suits. One of the biggest reasons why healthcare is so expensive is because malpractice lawsuits are really out of hand. So in my healthcare plan, we have our own lawyers. They have to agree to use our lawyers. And I have the laws strictly written so that our lawyers have to be right, fair, and just. They cannot, take advantage of the system to promote malpractice. And so I'll have a link underneath this video to my national healthcare plan. But Bernie Sanders likes my plan. And like I said, my men and the doctors like it. That's important. You got to get doctor support if you want, your healthcare plan to succeed. And the patients like it. It works out good for everyone. It covers just about everything. It covers dentistry. It covers natural medicine, acupuncture, chiropractic, pet care, pet health care, and it all covers, and no, we do not allow pre-existing condition limitations. That's not an issue. So basically, let's say you work for a company and you're offered several healthcare plans. The company has to offer our healthcare plan, the national healthcare plan. And so the person can choose between our national healthcare plan, which is very inexpensive, and they pay for it depending on how much income they have. So if they're really poor, they don't have to pay anything. If they have a little bit of income, it's like a very small percentage of their income goes to fund the national healthcare plan. And that's how we pay for it. And like if somebody's super rich, then more of their money, it could be up to more of their money. Though think I have a $2,000 max set for even the like millionaires and billionaires. They don't have to pay more than that. But it depends on your income. That's how much you pay into the healthcare plan. And it's very reasonable. Like if you're really poor, like if you only make, or bombs. Lord, stop, bitch. Oh, she just dropped a bomb. She doesn't like this video I'm making. Let me get some water. She just dropped a bomb. I can always tell. I can feel it. Ugh. She makes me choke on water too. Some sort of brain control. It's really cheap. Like, let's say you make $15,000 a year, which isn't a lot. In most states, you can't make, You can survive on that in the United States, but it's tough, but you can. Um, okay, let's say you make $15,000 a year, your monthly deduction would probably be really low, like maybe $5 a month, $10 a month at the most, probably more like $5 a month. It's a certain percentage of your income, and the percentages go higher the more you make. That's how I work it. And it's very affordable, and it saves people a lot of money. And like I said, everything's covered. I'll have a link to that underneath this video. Bernie Sanders likes it. The difference between my plan and Bernie Sanders' plan is that I allow private insurance to compete with the national health care plan. My prediction is that they're going to have a hard time competing with it because it's such a good deal. So you might say you're going to destroy private insurance. Well, they can work for the government. Hey, we could hire them. We could hire them as administrators. So I don't know. They might have to find another job. Okay, Secretary of Treasury, Ron Paul. The reason I chose Ron Paul is I admire his Austrian economics. I don't agree with him completely in economics, though. Austrian economics basically has this view that everybody is basically good, and that if you leave people alone and government doesn't interfere, that people will compete with each other, and those who are more qualified will end up making more money. And life doesn't always work that way, though. So basically, the Secretary of the Treasury works with the Federal Reserve Bank, which I do not like. And Ron Paul, actually, under conspiracy law, we have replaced the Federal Reserve Bank with the National Bank. I don't like the Federal Reserve Bank. They've been controlled by Jesuits since the beginning. But basically, as Secretary of the Treasury, Ron Paul's like he's my Steve Mnuchin or Alan Greenspan, you know. He's going to set interest rates. He will decide on how much money will be printed and that sort of stuff. So Ron Paul doesn't believe in negative interest rates, and I kind of agree with him. You got to be careful with that, and he's kind of leery about printing too much money. So I agree with him sort of, but I want him to work with Stephanie Kelton. But I admire his Austrian economics, except I believe in a little bit more government intervention than he does. But because I do want to have some checks and balances in there, so that those that are working for me don't spend the money foolishly. I want us to be wise stewards of the money that we have, and I think Ron Paul will help with that. So that's why I put him there. Secretary of Education Ben Carson. I wanted to put him in that position because he's an amazing person. He came from an impoverished background and he overcame it to become a brain surgeon. I mean, the man's incredible. And I also and he's very smart. And he's actually passionate about education. I mean, look what education has done for him. So I wanted him in that position. Secretary of Labor, Stephanie Kelton. I discovered her by accident from Rostislav Sabolka, who talked about her book. She wrote a book about how the deficit is not the big problem that everybody thinks it is. And I thought that's an interesting concept. She calls it the deficit myth. So I decided to listen to some videos of hers on that topic, and she makes a lot of sense. She believes that people have a misconception about the deficit. They think that deficit is a really, really bad thing, to have a big deficit. And she said that would be true if you're talking about a household. But she says a government and a household are two different things. So a deficit, she said, for a government is not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on how the government deals with the deficit. For instance, she said basically because a government can print their own money, it's not like dealing with a household. it doesn't mean that the government is, it's based, a deficit is the ratio between the money that the government's taking in and what they're spending out. That's what she says, deficit. And she said when the government's in deficit, it means that what the government is taking in is less than what it's spending out. But she says what people don't understand is that if there's a deficit, it means that the government, some of the money that they're spending out has been put in, I think they call it Treasury bonds, which earn interest. And what the government can do with the Treasury bonds is invest them in infrastructure or in jobs. And if that's the case, the deficit actually helps the population. I thought that's an interesting concept. She said the problem comes when the government is not wise or just in the way they invest these bonds. Like if they invest them just to make the rich people richer and they don't help the poor people in the population or the people that are struggling, then you got a problem. And so I really like her way of thinking. So I made her Secretary of Labor because I want her, we do have a deficit. It's huge, as everybody knows, and it's gotten worse under Trump because of his horrible military spending. I want her to correct the faulty way the government spends their money. So, because I don't want the money all spent on military. I think we spend far too much money on the military. I want the money spent on projects that will help the economy, help with inflation. So I think with her as Secretary of Labor, she's going to help use the government to invest our money, the deficit, use our Treasury bonds and projects that will help the economy and create jobs. So that's why I think she'll help me do that. So I want her in that position. And she understands how government economies work. Okay, it's not like a household budget. So that's why I've put her in that position. If you want to know more about Stephanie Kelton, she believes in what they call modern monetary theory, which makes a lot of sense to me. And if you want to see my views on that, check my website, the archive of my published pages, and all the pages about Stephanie Kelton. I'll have a link to my website's latest the archive of published pages, and you can listen to her videos. She's very smart. She's been to Cambridge University studying economics, and she's got some brilliant ideas. Okay, for Secretary of Commerce, I chose George Jorgensen. This is to kind of balance out. See, Stephanie Kelton is more green, kind of like a green in her approach to economics. And Joe Jorgensen is more libertarian. Now, the reason I put Joe Jorgensen with Secretary of Commerce is I'm really big into free enterprise. Even though I believe government should invest their money in worthwhile projects, like right now we're building Church of Gail Cities, and we're putting a heavy emphasis on small farms and hiring the homeless into the small farms. See, a lot of people are getting homeless because of the coronavirus, and they're losing their jobs. And we are using government money to create Church of Gail cities that are totally self-sustaining. They grow their own food using small farms, and we are hiring a lot of the homeless people to be farmers. That's part of my conspiracy law on how to deal with the homeless. For those who would make lousy farmers, I also have another conspiracy law for the homeless, which would we have training programs, free training programs for the homeless, and we have them we test them to determine where their aptitudes and abilities are, and then set them up in a training program that matches their aptitudes and abilities. And if they have like a drug abuse problem, first, if they're homeless because of drug abuse or because they're drug addicts, then we take care of them medically. Okay. But if they're not, I have two different categories of homeless. Homeless category A, I think that's the drug abuse people. Then B, those who are just homeless for other reasons. If they're homeless because they just had bad luck, not because they're a drunkard or an alcoholic or a drug addict, then we set them up in training programs, which no cost to them. We provide them free housing. And this is where I'm talking about, where Stephanie Kelton can use our Treasury bonds to set up programs like that. And eventually, by training the homeless and putting them in jobs that are suited to their temperament and disposition, we're going to end up boosting the economy and getting the homeless off the streets. We're going to, and also we train them for jobs where they can be employed. Like, we're not going to train them to be musicians or actors. They can like do that on their own if they want. But our purpose for training the homeless is to get them off the street and into a job that will pay their bills, and which is a job that they would enjoy doing. And we use government money to do that. It's a government program. And Stephanie's going to help in that as Secretary of Labor. But Jo Jorgensen, as Secretary of Commerce, her job will be to make sure that the government takes hands off of healthy competition between businesses out there, and to ensure that we don't have unfair monopolies out there like we've got right now. So, like, she might help with the unfair monopoly in big tech. I want to see a little bit more competition in a lot of the companies out there. We need more small businesses. We need more competition. And as Secretary of Commerce, though I do believe in regulating big tech, and that's where Tulsi Gabbard might have to override Jo Jorgensen or whatever, because not all the people in my cabinet are going to agree with each other. But I do want to have as much freedom in the business community. Oh, those bombs. She's got to stop dropping those bombs. We're making progress with the bombs, but she's still dropping them. So anyways, Jo Jorgensen's going to help in that area. I wanted a libertarian in that position. Okay. Housing and urban development. Ben Carson, I think, is doing a good job there. I'm going to keep him there. He comes from an impoverished background. He knows what it's like to struggle. I think he sympathizes with the homeless. So this is something he cares about, and I'm just going to keep him there. And he's going to help us also with our homeless projects. I already talked about them. Press Secretary, Donald Trump and Kanye West. Donald is a great communicator. That's how he got elected in the last election. So, well, actually, I won the last election, but he's really a great communicator. He really is. It amazes me how he can get people on his side, even when some of his policies have been horrible the past 3 or 4 years. He does that because he's a good communicator. So I've decided I'm going to let him be my press secretary. Kanye West, I think, will help to make sure that he will help communicate with the Black community. They have their own lingo, their own language. He understands them, and he will communicate well with them. Jesse Ventura. Oh, she's dropping those bombs. Office of Management and Budget. I wanted him in this position because I don't want the deficit hawks to say, we can't have your national health care plan because it costs too much money. He's going to put a stop to that. He's going to say, I'm in charge of the Office of Management and Budget. We're not going to worry about the deficit because we're going to be investing those Treasury bonds into funds that will eventually help the economy. So I don't want any hold on spending government money. Right now, we've got an emergency all over the world. I want somebody there who will get the job done. We need to help people. They need help now. We need to get stimulus money out there. People are in danger of being homeless. We got to work on that. We got to get government money into projects for the homeless. We got to get my national health care plan up and running. He will make sure that those funds are not blocked. Of course, I know we got to go through Congress and stuff, but I think I can use Tulsi Gabbard to make some executive orders. And besides, my conspiracy law is the supreme law of the land. It can even override the Constitution if I have to. And my form of government is a constitutional monarchy. And I believe that if we have an emergency, I can issue executive orders, which is what I think. We've got some emergencies right now. We override the Constitution if it blocks conspiracy law. See, the problem is, even though I like the concept of the 3 phases of the executive branch, legislative branch, the executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch, how they balance each other out, the Jesuits have gone in there and really messed it up. The judicial branch is corrupt now from top to bottom. And my conspiracy law has overhauled that whole thing. Just go check out my links at my webpage. The legislative branch is corrupt about 80%. The people are not being represented in the legislative branch, especially in the Democratic Party. And my conspiracy law is working around overriding that. Basically, this is how it works. Let's say we decide we need to do something, like get a homeless program going right now, get the national health care program going right now. And let's say the Democrats say, we're not going to pass any bills to fund this. Well, according to conspiracy law, if those people in the legislature are Lori McBride Jesuits, their votes don't count. So we just override them. Yeah. You miss. First of all, no Lori McBride Jesuit is supposed to hold any political position. So I could just make an executive order and say, get it done. Override them all. Yeah. Let's just put it this way. We will play with them, and we will count the votes from those who honor conspiracy law. But any legislature that's in there that does not honor my conspiracy law, they're not even supposed to be there. So their votes don't count. Okay, anyways, we're going to move on from there. If you want to really get the latest on me, go to Gabriel Chana, Fox News 00 on cable. Alrighty. So Jesse Ventura is my Office of Management and Budget. My trade representative is Vladimir Putin. I mean, Donald Trump and his stupid sanctions. I avoid all the sanctions. None of them. I don't believe in sanctions. This is where I'm totally libertarian. Tariffs, I'm not sure about, though I think, they have use. We can use them to punish nations that are not conspiracy law honoring nations. We can use tariffs on them. But sanctions, we do not issue sanctions against fellow conspiracy law honoring nations like Russia. And I think Iran is too. So we don't issue sanctions against those people. All the sanctions against Russia are dropped. Why would we want to issue sanctions against somebody who's my ally? That only helps out Lori McBride. So that's why, and the trade representative, Vladimir Putin, he's going to decide who we do trade with. Russia is my ally. So, you might say, what about China and TikTok? Actually, I think I agree with Trump on TikTok, banning TikTok. That China is going through a civil war right now. And I would say that we've got the leader on our side, but he's having to weed out corruption inside his own government. And it's complicated over there. And we've been doing that here in the United States as well, which is why I set up my own cabinet. I had to kick out most of Trump's cabinet. They were all Lori McBride Jesuits. Anyways, Vladimir Putin's my trade representative. Bill Nye, I've chosen him because Bill Nye has worked with Church of Gail many times in the past, and he's a good guy. So I wanted him in charge of my Environmental Protection Agency. You might say, how do you feel about the Green New Deal? I'm not sure. I'll let Bill Nye decide on that, okay? He's the scientist, I'm not. So I'm going to let him decide. He's really a smart guy, and he's helped us out at Church of Gail many times when we had emergencies where we needed a really smart scientist to help us out. So I put him in charge of Environmental Protection Agency. Tucker Carlson is White House Chief of Staff. I've been watching him at Fox News, and I agree with about 95% of what he says. So I thought he'd be the perfect person to round up who Tulsi Gabbard, my vice president, because basically I delegate a lot to her, who she needs to listen to as she considers, decisions she needs to make and so forth. So I've made him White House Chief of Staff. Attorney General Bob Barr. I discovered him a couple years ago. I actually made him Attorney General in 2018, and I'm going to keep him. He's a conservative, like a kind of Republican libertarian type, but he's very up on the Constitution and on how our current judicial setup is it's really violating the U.S. Constitution. And my conspiracy law is very similar to the U.S. Constitution in many ways. So I wanted him there to help me weed out the corruption in the judicial system. It's very, very corrupt, filled with Jesuit cronyism from top to bottom. Okay, Secretary of Defense Sergei Shoigu. I wanted to put an American in this spot, but the problem is I couldn't find an American, a high-ranking military officer in the American military that wasn't a Laurie McBride Jesuit. She apparently, in fact, I've learned brain to brain that most of the germ bombs that have been dropped all over the world was the United States military. They were Laurie McBride Jesuits. Laurie McBride infiltrated the United States military, almost took it totally over. So basically, they were doing their own thing. They were just ignoring Trump, doing their own thing. Yeah, and they were lying. The top brass, like that Mike Esper guy, he's really corrupt. He was a Laurie McBride Jesuit. So I made sure he's gone, man. I thought, you know what? The only way we're going to find all the corruption inside the United States military is I got to get a Russian in there. So the person who's in charge, who's the Secretary of Defense or the Minister of Defense in Russia, he's got dual citizenship. He also speaks fluent English, by the way, as well as fluent Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, and I think Ukrainian and Russian. So he's really a smart guy. And he comes from, he comes from the eastern part of Russia. So he looks kind of Asian, But I did a lot of research on him, and he's interested in a lot of Indian, Japanese, and Chinese folklore, and I thought he'd be cool in that position. In fact, he's done a lot. I just installed him about a week ago or a couple days ago, and already he's been weeding out corruption inside the United States military. And for a while, he was able to stop Laurie from dropping some bombs. It only lasted about one day. She's recouped, and it appears that Laurie's took some of her corrupt American military with her, and now they're hiding out in China. And she's bombing us from China. That's what I'm hearing, brain to brain. So China's got to win that civil war over there for conspiracy law. Until then, that's why I'm still coughing. But yeah, it's a world war we got between me and Laurie McBride. We're winning in Russia and the United States. Actually, I won in Russia a long time ago. I'm just now starting to win in the United States since I became president and since I'm enforcing conspiracy law and weeding out all the Jesuits in Trump's cabinet and weeding out the judges, the legislators. I mean, it's a job. But I've had to get some Russian help because I can't trust any military in the American military that's a high-ranking officer. They're all corrupt. So that's why I've got Sergei Shoigu. And he's finding them, boy. He discovered that about 80% of the American military was Laurie McBride Jesuit. They were the ones, basically, they're the reason everybody got this stinking virus and this getting sick from the yeast, the Candida auris. It's them. And so we took care of them, and now Laurie McBride has regrouped, and she's basing herself in China. So we got to defeat the Chinese. China's in civil war. We got the head, the president, but he's got a lot of corruption in his government. I think he's been working with Sergei Shoigu to try now to weed out the corruption in his own Chinese military, because they've been working with Lori McBride. So we got our work cut out for us. Pray for us. Secretary of Energy, Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's really good friends with Bill Nye. And I want the way we use nuclear to be state of the art, because we are competing with Lori McBride Jesuits. They're using all sorts of nuclear stuff. Secretary of Energy deals a lot with nuclear. So I wanted somebody really smart in there who's going to work well with Bill Nye. Administrator of Small Business Administration, Rostislav Sabolka. He's this unknown guy that I discovered by accident, and he's got a bachelor's degree in microbiology as well as political science. And I believe he's fluent in several languages, including Russian. I think he's from Croatia or Serbia, one of those countries. And he's got some interesting, he's a socialist. But I like his ideas. He's an admirer of Stephanie Kelton, and he was a Bernie Sanders supporter. And I think he would do a real good job as administrator of the Small Business Administration. So I put him in there. Our small businesses are about to be destroyed because of what Lori McBride's done with this pandemic. They need a lot of help. And this is not a time to be talking about the deficit. We need to help these people out. They need our help. And I think he'll do the job. Rostislav Sabolka. For Secretary of the Interior, John Echohawk, I chose him. He's an Indian. I don't agree with Trump building pipelines in Indian lands. I want him to respect their rights. And so to make sure the Indians, as a just ruler, America took this land away from the Native American Indians. And I think we should treat them with respect. And I just feel like Jesus would like it if I respected Indian rights. So I wanted to make sure that it happened. So John Echohawk made him Secretary of the Interior. CIA, totally corrupt from top to bottom. I actually had to choose somebody who was ex-CIA, but I was able to find an American that I felt was qualified, Brian Dean Wright. I chose him. He's ex-CIA. He's totally aware of the corruption in the CIA, and he hates it. And I think he will work with my Russians to reform the CIA, our intelligence. Director of National Intelligence, I had to get a Russian, Alexander Bortnikov. He is also the head of Russia's version of the KGB, or they don't have the KGB anymore. They've got a different, I forget what it's called, but the replacement for the KGB, he's the head of that. He's very close with Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin would not allow anyone corrupt to be in that position. So I put him in there. And he's going to work with our intelligence to weed out the Lori McBride Jesuits in our intelligence networks, and also just figure out what they're up to. Maybe he's going to be able to help us out with China and help us to get China, under conspiracy law. Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Dan Bongino. Lori McBride is a communist and a fascist, though she parades as some socialist. She's not a socialist. She is a vicious communist and fascist. And Dan Bongino is going to help us, and she's behind Antifa and the Black Lives Matters protests. That is a complicated situation going on there. The Black people, their rights are being violated. But at the same time, Lori McBride is taking advantage. She actually creates injustices. She perpetrates injustices, like she will kill Black people unfairly using her own agents. And then she will play victim and pretend like she had nothing to do with the crimes that happened, that she's against it. And then she uses that as an excuse to get her agents into Black Lives Matters and Antifa, and to cause anarchy. That is evil. By the way, a lot of these anarchists are claiming that they don't have to be executed as Lori McBride Jesuits under my conspiracy law because they're demon possessed, which means they're insane. That is going to work under conspiracy law. If you are a willing and knowing Lori McBride Jesuit, you are worthy of the death penalty, whether you're demon possessed or not. Okay? Basically, a lot of these people that are demon possessed chose of their own free will to be demon possessed. That ain't going to cut it. You're gone. We're not going to put up with this. We can't keep these people alive. They're very dangerous. Lori McBride Jesuits are very dangerous. It's us or them. Either we take them out or they're going to take us out. That's it. And Dan Bongino understands this. He knows we got to be tough. You say, how do you feel about Trump going into Portland? Like I said, that's a complicated situation. In fact, I'll talk about that with my, well, Dan Bongino, I think, is going to weed out the corruption inside Homeland. Lori McBride has got moles in Homeland Security. So she's trying to undermine our efforts to take out her agents who are anarchists by putting moles inside of Trump's own Homeland Security who violate the law, going out there to arrest the anarchists, like picking on homeless people and arresting people that are just using their free speech but haven't done anything violent. So it's kind of complicated. And so I think Dan Bongino will work to weed out the moles in Homeland Security and also arrest the anarchists. We got to do both. Secretary of Transportation, I decided I'll keep Elaine Chao. I like the fact that she comes from an Asian background and that she believes in taking care of rural infrastructure. There's a lot of weaknesses in that area. Most of the accidents that are happening in the United States are happening in the rural areas because our infrastructure, a lot of them, because our infrastructure is so bad. And she believes, I agree with her philosophy there. So I'm going to keep her. And also the countries with the best infrastructure are the Asian countries like Japan, Singapore. And she's an Asian, so maybe her mindset will be helpful. So I'm going to keep her there. Secretary of Agriculture, I'm hearing brain to brain from Brent that he's doing a great job, Sonny Perdue, setting up our Church of Gail Cities because he's a farmer. He comes from a farmer's background, and we're training the homeless to be farmers, small farmers, and other types of farmers. He's doing a great job, so we're just going to keep him there. He's from a farmer background. He's also got administrative background. He's worked as Georgia governor, so that's good. Tulsi Gabbard, Secretary of Veterans Affairs. I like her philosophy on how to take what the military should be. She agrees with me that we spend way too much money on the military-industrial complex, yet we neglect our veterans. In other words, the money's all going to the military-industrial complex, and it's not going to the soldiers who need the money. And she will fix that. And some of these people are also being poisoned. They go out into unnecessary wars, just so we can keep financing the military-industrial complex. They get sick from chemical attacks and, like going out to Syria where they shouldn't be there. We shouldn't even be in Syria. We need to pull out. We need to pull out of Afghanistan. We shouldn't even be there. And they're getting sick from being in the military and the military not looking out for their health. And then they come home and they can't get the money to take care of health conditions they developed as a result of being out on the battlefield. And Tulsi's going to take care of that. So I want her in that position. Okay, Chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Stephanie Kelton. Okay, I've got people in my cabinet who don't agree with each other on economics. I guarantee you that Bernie Sanders is going to be arguing with, some people like maybe my Joe Jorgensen or Rand Paul or Ron Paul. So I need somebody who will kind of like present a report of what everybody says and kind of sum it up and let Tulsi Gabbard, my vice president, read it, and who comes along to my line of thinking, and that would be Stephanie Kelton. I kind of lean a little liberal in my economics, okay? I admire Austrian economics, but I don't agree with it 100%. I'm actually more in favor of modern monetary theory. So Stephanie Kelton If there's a disagreement between people like, oh no, the deficit, you're going to make the deficit worse, she will decide on how to deal with that. Stephanie Kelton. Okay, so that's it, folks. Thus far in my cabinet are 6 Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard and Stephanie Kelton, they're both Democrats. They both have 2 positions each. 6 Republicans, Ben Carson has 2 positions. 1 Green, 2 Libertarians. Tucker Carlson's registered Democrat, but he's not wholly aligned with them, so I've made him neutral. And then several people in my cabinet are just their own person, obviously the Russians, and they don't seem to align with any political party. So this is my State of the Union, okay? I'm a big delegator, and because I am, I'm very, very careful about who I put in my cabinet. And fortunately, unlike Trump, I don't have a wicked husband who is ordering me to put in his pick. Actually, my men don't tell me what to do. They give me a lot of freedom. The only time Brent will correct me is when Jesus tells him to correct me. He almost always agrees with just about everything I do. He hardly ever corrects me. He will every now and then, but he does it so sweet. He'll say, darling, I was thinking, maybe you ought to consider this, and he does it so sweet. He's thinking, I agree with you on this and this and this, but maybe you ought to consider this. And then he knows that I will sit back and listen to reason. He knows his wife is not some crazed lunatic like Lori McBride who would scream and holler at him, and say, you listen to me or else. Oh, she's terrible. She's terrible. She needs to go down. She is so full of herself. She thinks she's so smart, so politically correct, that she's right about everything. And if you prove her wrong, then she'll just kind of weasel her way around, and she'll get one of her smart lawyers to write up something really fancy to make herself seem like she's right. She's always finagling. She can't ever admit that she's wrong. She always has to be right about everything. And most of what she does, she is not very well thought out. She has to borrow the brains of the people that she uses. Like, she uses a lot of Jew clones. So she's not a truly independent thinker. In fact, I think Satan's giving her a lot of advice. If not for Satan's help, she'd be a goner. She's not really, I'm a lot smarter than her. But she's got Satan helping her out. And Satan, he's not dumb. So, but these are all my own. Every single person that I've chosen from my cabinet. I haven't heard from my men in ages. They're in some court case. So I just do a lot of my own research. I have a very high emotional IQ. And I can pretty much sense who I think would support me and would work with me. And that those are who I choose. Now, I know they're not going to agree with each other, but I actually don't want rubber stamps in my cabinet. I want them to be their own person, because the world's complicated and the problems are complicated. And the solutions are not always simple. So I like having a diverse cabinet. They could get together, brainstorm, and come up with solutions as long as they honor my conspiracy law. But I picked people who I feel would understand what I'm trying to accomplish with conspiracy law and help me to enforce it effectively.